Since I started sewing in August 2020, I've been terrified of a lot of things. For a while, I was apprehensive to modify any commercial pattern, lest it go horribly awry. Eventually, I managed to get over that hurdle, and I'm proud of myself for expanding my skills. And wow, garments fit me so much better now. I was also nervous to sew any type of headwear, but I managed to overcome that fear too. Hobbies like sewing are constantly encouraging us to face our fears, and try that which sometimes makes us uncomfortable. Why am I speaking about this during a smocking video? Well, I used to be terrified of smocking too. Until I gave it a shot, and guess what? Honeycomb smocking, at least, is surprisingly easy. You might also be apprehensive to try smocking, but have fallen in love with its gorgeous look. This tutorial is here to quell any nervousness and, in simple steps, teach you how exactly to accomplish this decorative technique so that you don't have to miss out on it because it might feel scary. I will have to warn you, whilst honeycomb smocking isn't as hard as it appears, it is time-consuming, so try to get lost in the process of it all if you can. The hand sewing stitches you'll need to know for this technique includes the running stitch and the whip stitch. You'll also need to know how to tie a knot in your thread. If you don't know these stitches, then I recommend watching this old but informative video that I made last year. Before you begin, you'll need to gather all of your materials. You'll need beeswax, which is optional, but it helps tremendously, and a marker tool of choice, like chalk for instance. You'll also need a sewing needle and thimble, a ruler or measuring tape, and finally your thread. It is helpful to have a cheaper basting thread as well as your nice matching thread if that's the look you're going for, but you can also just use one nice matching thread if you don't mind wasting a little bit. For your fabric, it's best to pick something light and flowy like a cotton, linen, fine silk, or another similar alternative. The very first step is to measure and mark your fabric. Decide how large or small you want your honeycombs to be. You're going to want to mark not only left to right, but also up to down, each time an even distance apart. This is going to create the uniformity that you so often see in an actual honeycomb. For this demonstration, I chose 1 inch across and 1 inch down, which creates a rather large pattern. I did this so that my work would be easy for you all to see, but generally a bodice might have 1/4 inch markings, sometimes even smaller. Also, don't worry about your markings being absolutely perfect because slight imperfections are firstly natural, and secondly, it doesn't really take away from the final look of the smocking if it's slightly uneven because you don't really notice it. This technique can be quite forgiving. Take your waxed thread, either your nice sewing thread or the cheaper basting thread. These threads will be removed at the end, so it's whatever you don't mind wasting. Make sure one end has a knot and begin by stitching each row across with a running stitch. I decided to place my knot on the wrong side of the fabric, but you can also experiment with having the knot on the right side of the fabric. Hand sew a running stitch using each dot as a guide for each up and down stitch. Go up and down through the fabric from dot to dot until you've finished the entire row. I like to straighten out the fabric as I'm going in order to make sure that the tension is all even and very well distributed. Leave a tail of thread at the end of the row and do not knot it. Repeat this process for each of your rows of dots until you have as many threads as you need to fill up all your markings. Once all of your gathering rows are in place, grab each of your thread ends for all of the rows and gently pull on them, bunching the fabric into nicely stacked pleats. Leave your gathering thread ends untied. You'll end up with something that looks a bit like this. At this point, you'll need to count your folds. In this demonstration, I have 5 folds in total, so that's going to be the number that I keep in mind. Now the honeycomb pattern might seem like an anomaly, but all you need to do is connect each fold in a specific pattern. Remember those dots I made going downwards to denote each column? We're going to focus on not only moving left to right now, but also downward movement. Since I have 5 folds total, for the odd numbers of rows, so the 1st, 3rd, 5th, and so on, we will connect folds 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4 together. And if we had a 6th fold, we'd also connect 5 and 6, and continue this pattern moving forward. We only have 5 folds, so for this specific demonstration, we'll skip the 5th fold. Connecting them is really simple. You just take your matching colored thread, if this is the look you're going for, tie a knot, place the knot on the wrong side of the fabric at the top dip where the peak of the fold is, and then complete a few whip stitches joining the 2 correlating folds. Make a knot or a few back stitches in the same spot on the wrong side of the fabric again to secure off the thread, and then snip. For each connection of folds, this is the stitching process that you're going to repeat. So here I've connected folds 1 and 2 on the first row, and now I'm connecting folds 3 and 4 and leaving 5 alone, since we don't have a 6th fold. Now this first row is done, and we can move on to the next one. This is the stitching pattern that you're going to need to revisit for the 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, and all of the other odd numbered rows. For the even numbered rows, so the 2nd, 4th, 6th, 8th, and so on, we are going to connect folds 2 and 3 together, and folds 4 and 5 together. If we had a 6th and a 7th fold, we'd also join those, but we don't for this demonstration. This alternating pattern is what creates the diagonal honeycomb look. As we did for the odd numbered rows, we are again creating little whip stitches and tying off to join the folds. Then you just continue this procedure, alternating the pattern between odd and even numbered rows until all of your rows are complete. Be sure to use your handy dots that you drew earlier as guides. Everything should be stitched now, and it might look a little bit funny. Well, that's because we still need to remove those gathering threads that we sewed earlier. Since you didn't knot both ends, removing them is as simple as pulling the knotted end and getting the thread out. This unleashes the honeycombs once and for all. Your honeycomb smocking is now complete, and you can continue with your fabric however you desire. This technique is especially handy for parts of garments that you need to gather, as it reduces some of the width. And it's also a great embellishment that you can add later on to any garments that have a lot of billowing excess fabric, like a flowy blouse, for example. As you can see right now, some of the honeycombs are collapsing in, and that's because basically it needs another completed row on either side in order to create tension to hold the honeycomb open. The more honeycombs you have going from left to right, the greater the pattern will be, and you'll notice it creates a striking effect if you choose to create even more columns. Before I go, I want to quickly mention that I'm now offering one-to-one appointments on my website. It is now possible to book hour-long tutoring sessions for those just starting out with historical hand sewing to work on stitches, construction methods, or whatever else you might need support with. And I'm also offering hour-long consultations for anyone that wants advice on how to build their history bounding or historical fashion wardrobe. This includes helping you plan out a historical capsule wardrobe if that's what you're interested in. Since I've been wearing historical fashion for a number of years now, I have experienced what it's like to live in these clothes firsthand. So if you're interested in learning more and getting some support on your own historical fashion or historical sewing journey, all of the information is in the pinned comment below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in 2 weeks for another video.